Thank you, Eva, for that introduction. Welcome to you all. I should thank you for coming in these difficult circumstances. Yesterday, when I traveled, the snowing was only starting when I approached Bonn. So I may get stuck in Germany. Who knows? Because of this of the snow. Um, Welcome also to those online. I understand there are a number of people. This is a hybrid session. I'll try to stay near this microphone, which is very unnatural for me because I'm used to walking and talking rather than standing and talking. So please correct me if the sound disappears from the online session. Yeah, my name is Peter Mollinga. I've been, like Eva said, I used to be involved in the interdisciplinary course here in what then we had the CEF-A department. I'm a water resource engineer by training, long ago irrigation engineer at the Agricultural University in Wageningen in the Netherlands. And then became a sort of political economist of unequal water distribution in my PhD. And over the past many years, I have been working basically what I would now say, try to help establish a field and do research in a field that is now often called critical water studies. I'm also one of the founding editors of Water Alternatives, an open access e-journal on water politics and development is the subtitle. So we are in our 17th or 18th. We started in, no, 15th or 16th volume, I think. We are started in 2008. And it's doing reasonably well. Please publish when you're a water scholar. Please consider publishing with us. It doesn't cost anything, not the publishing, not the downloading. We have the interest of predatory publishers, and our market value is apparently going up. We are getting an offer now and then. Can we buy you? But we don't. So it will remain free for everyone in the world, and both to publish and to read. So that was my pitch for Water Alternatives. Now this talk is actually a sort of a pitch for myself. Because I wrote to Zef and I said, would you be interested in? I'm interested in a few more years before I really retire and sit at my desk and write. But I still want to have. I'm still planning to do some serious field research and in the next few years, projects I was already designing and. Would Zef be interested to host that? And would there be a mutual interest? Would there be possibilities for collaboration, etc., etc.? So that's basically it. I'm presenting myself here and I'm telling you what I'm doing and what I'm planning to do. And then hopefully we can have an exchange. You can ask questions about that and expand or on other things that I don't talk about to get to know me, boundary work being one of them, the interdisciplinary course topic. But then also it would be interesting if whether there's any resonance with your own interests. I'll be very interested to hear that. And I'm not very much aware of what is happening at ZEF, has been happening at ZEF in the past years. So here you see pictures marking the three projects that I will very briefly talk about that I'm working on, and that I'll show some pictures of. Now, my present research interest for the next few years. Oh, sorry, I should explain the subtitle. I mean, if you want a broad heading of the work I'm presently interested in, I would. This is the title of a special issue I published together with Julia Obertreis, Timothy Moss, and Christine Biexel on called Water Infrastructure and Political Rule. So that started from. So all of them are German-speaking or German-based scholars. So that's another reason to partly come back to Germany, because there are a few colleagues. Broadly speaking, there are a number of water colleagues also in this domain. And we published a special issue with basically kind of tried to be an inventory of the kind of approaches, the social science approaches to infrastructure and governance or rule, as you would prefer to put it. So how do governments use infrastructure to rule? That is one of the simple way of saying it. Now, that is roughly the kind of area that I've been thinking about in the past years. And I'll tell you that I have two projects in the making there, which have still rather unwieldy titles. They're both at the stage that I've done recently done field work the past year after COVID again to prepare them. And so they are now at the stage of writing. So I'm planning to start writing the projects together with Indian colleagues. They all three are focused on India. South Asia is my main regional focus. Through ZEF, I've also started to work in Central Asia, and that still lingers, but I'm not no longer a Central Asia, strongly focused Central Asia scholar. Though recently we did some work in Kyrgyzstan on a different topic, so the interest is still there. Now, two projects that are new. One of them is called The Performative Dimensions of Riverfront Development in Indian States, and with a very long working title. And then the second is The Paradox of State-Led Large-Scale Infrastructure Development in Neoliberal Market Times in Two Indian States, even longer. So that's slightly less developed yet, and you can see the titles become snappier when your ideas develop. So what both of these projects try to understand in the Indian context is how in the present, let's say, political regime, water and water development, water infrastructure development is part of strategies of governance and rule. And of course, we have in India now a regime that many would describe as authoritarian populist or populist authoritarian, or more pejorative terms also added to that. But there is all this long-term interest in governments like to invest in large-scale infrastructure. The famous Wietvogel thesis on Oriental despotism. I don't know if some of you are aware of that, who said that centralized states in Asia are necessary because they need to manage large-scale irrigation systems. Now, the thesis has been discredited. That's how the special issue started. But the question of the infrastructures, how do states use infrastructure to implement governance strategies and rule? That is kind of the leading question that has remained from that kind of a background. And that's what I'm interested in. And India at the moment provides a number of interesting examples to enter into that question. They are setting up a riverfront authority, which is going to build a riverfront. Is basically what you did in Hamburg or in kind of Hong Kong, Shanghai are the big examples in Asia. How riverside development, waterfront development, there are different words for it. There's now an authority is being set up to do this in 100 cities across India with massive amounts of money thrown at it. So a massive infrastructure development project that is probably going to happen at least partly. And that is what the first project has as its background. The second project is about the kind of, at least initially, counterintuitive phenomenon that we live in neoliberal times, and the idea is that the state should play a smaller role. We started in the 1990s by saying the withdrawal of the state, more market, more private sector participation, also very prominent in the Indian case, in discourse, partly in practice. And what do we see now in certain Indian states, including the state where the prime minister comes from? We see really unprecedented, massive investment in water supply infrastructure for water supply to rural and urban people. So you don't expect that in a neoliberal era where everything is about reducing the role of the state and increasing the role of the private sector. Here we go. It's almost like an increased return to state-led development. Well, the question then, is it really that, or how do we understand this kind of a return? So that is, so both these projects are about how do we understand the relation between state rule and water infrastructure development to understand something of the present governance system in India. And there, of course, this is not just about India, but we have the shift to authoritarian populism is a global shift. Think of Turkey, think of Brazil under Bolsonaro. So there's a whole range of examples like that. So the broader setting, social theory setting, is about understanding on the nature of the emergence of these more authoritarian regimes. Part of the discussion is what are the right words to use to describe these regimes. That is part of the question. So don't take these words too seriously at the moment. That's part of the research that we need to do. And then there's one, so these are the two projects that I'm working on to write proposals on, and where I would see collaboration also. Then there's one ongoing project, once an irrigation engineer, forever an irrigation engineer. I love irrigation. So what I've been doing over the past 3 decades is, with intervals, visit and study the large-scale irrigation systems that was the subject of my PhD. So we're doing a kind of restudy of that to write a story about large-scale irrigation and rural development over a kind of longitudinal view of rural change in an irrigation setting. And in February, I'll do some more field work, and then later in the year, and then we should write a book. So that's more of a writing project that doesn't really require further financial support. So that's, I will say a little bit about these 3 projects, and particularly show you a few pictures. Not all of you may be familiar with India and with these issues, so maybe it's nice to see some of that. Now, in the Riverfronts project, what is a riverfront? Like I said, this is a kind of an attempt to modernize or to upgrade riverside developments, like we've done massively in Europe in old harbor areas, for instance, or the city of Rotterdam, where I live not far away from, is an excellent example of that kind of an effort. Hamburg, you have here as a well-known example. There are many examples. In India, we will try to do this in 3 cities. This is a city you may know as Benares. This is one of the holiest cities of India, for the Hindu population at least. And it has about 6 kilometers of ghats, are they called. Ghats are these stepwise approaches to the river. That is called a ghat. And there are 6 kilometers of them for all kinds of temples, with only temples and access to the river. So there all the holy dips are taken. And this is just one example. I photographed all of them. It's a nice series, but this is just one of them. And here you see a cremation site on the ghats. Hindus are cremated there. This is on the river Ganges. And the thing with the pipes is an electric crematorium, but people still prefer to burn their dead deceased family members on the wood fire, and you can see that that is actively done. Now, that's a waterfront that has existed for a few thousand years. Varanasi claims to be the oldest living city in the world. So in huge cultural site. It's also very much a tourist site. And there's a lot of religious tourism here, include from both Indians and foreigners. And every evening you can see, it's not a very clear picture when it's, but this is on the ghats. They do a kind of a performance, a show of Hindu rituals and music and all kinds of things. And then massive people flock there massively, also on the river. This is taken from a boat in the river, which I was at a conference, and the excursion was to take us there. So a massive tourist industry has grown up, both for domestic and international tourism in Varanasi. And so the kind of water development approach of the municipality here is river-centric development for a spiritual economy. Now, that's a very nice phrase, I think. But that's it. So it's not just about the riverfront. It's also about beautification of the city, approach road transport development, etc. So infrastructure is a bit larger than just the water infrastructure. And that is the object of study. Now, there's one picture there on the right where you see toy trains and a much more modern architecture. That they've created a modern waterfront right next to the, let's say, the age-old traditional Hindu-focused and Jain-focused riverfront. And that is a public park, a public place, where also the Muslim population, there's a large Muslim population in North India. This is in North India. So it's much more of a secular space, much smaller, but still quite big, and immensely popular for evening and morning recreation. So that's the modern version of the riverfront that we also see there. Now, why is this interesting? Not just as it in itself, but this is the political constituency of the prime minister. So the politics is not just about state politics, but it's also about national politics. After the G20 that was recently held in India, the delegates were all, if they wanted, shipped to Varanasi to see the wonders of this holy city. So it was one of the excursion sites post G20 also. So what we have here is a kind of a state using cultural performance as part of its political project. That is basically, so it's the politics has to do a lot with the cultural dimension here. Now, this is a little bit further up in the Indo-Gangetic Plain upstream. This is in a city called Lucknow, which is the capital of Uttar Pradesh, the largest populated state. Varanasi is also in UP. And this is very different riverfront. Imagine this is not the Ganges. This is the so-called Gomti River. And what it is basically a bend in the river with a floodplain. And on that floodplain, political parties have used that floodplain as an arena, as a stage for projecting their political identities and programs. Now, UP is the state where for the first time a Dalit, a former untouchable, we used to call them, a Dalit prime minister came to power, Mayawati, and her party was called the BSP. And what she did to mark that enormous, momentous event of the establishment or the ability to gain political power for that group, that class and caste, is to build a memorial park for this guy. This is Ambedkar, who is very famous in India. He was a Dalit co-author of the Indian Constitution. So he is the hero of Dalit India. In every neighborhood in India, where of labor class and a Dalit population, this statue with this in this form, it's a kind of standard statue that you will find. So he's the hero. Now, Mayawati wanted to be a hero as well. So what did she do? She built this massive park. It looks like a mausoleum almost. It's huge. And they didn't put any trees. I don't know why. It's very hot in summer. It's very uncomfortable. But because it's all granite stone and other stone. But it's massive. It's made to impress. That's very clear. And one of the interesting features here is all these elephants. There is an enormous number of elephants, actually. And here even Ambedkar is put on an elephant statue there. Why is that? Well, you say India, there are elephants, but it's not that. The elephant is the election symbol of the BSP party on the ballot paper. So it is not just an elephant, it is actually a political statement. We are here. This is us. And in election time, the funny anecdote is that in election time, all these elephant statues are covered because then it is seen to be political propaganda for the party. So they can't be seen. So it's a kind of an amusing twist too. But you see how political the kind of organization of public space through infrastructure is. And this is all on the floodplain that has been colonized for this, and therefore the river is suffering quite a bit. If you're a river ecologist, you wouldn't like the ecological effects of this. Now, also here, of course, they were not in power forever. They lost one of the elections. And then the next government said, let us also do something with the river. Let's build a riverfront. So this is the Gomti River Park that you see here on the bottom right. And that is the modern version of the modern, like same in Varanasi, kind of the middle class, recreational, strolling along the river, having an ice cream, doing a boat ride, that kind of a aspiration of modernity, I would say. And that's the different political party. So here you see this floodplain has become a playground, if you want to put it. It's a very serious playground for through infrastructure, realizing and symbolizing certain political projects. So that and this river park is really horrible. It looks nice. It's nice to walk there, but if you look carefully, you will see they've basically concreted the river banks. So ecologically, this is a disaster. And there is a waterkeeper. I don't know whether you're aware of the waterkeeper network in the world, but this kind of ecological observers, social activists who make a hue and cry about the kind of ecological and other dimensions of water water quality, ecological dimensions of water. It's not an innocent activity. The waterkeeper of the Iraqi marshes in near Basra was kidnapped February last year for 2 weeks and released again. So it's environmental activists are often in danger. The Guardian keeps a list of how many were killed each year. Last year it were about 200. So it's environmental activism. It's far from endangerment. And one of the people that is the person who is the waterkeeper for the Gomti River project, for the Gomti River, will hopefully also be involved in our research. He is a faculty at, again, an Ambedkar University. So again, in the same. So you see politics everywhere in all the dimensions of the riverfront. Then this is the last riverfront, the third one. So the first one was about culture. The second one was about politics. The third one is about economics. This is the city of Ahmedabad, which is the economic capital of a state called Gujarat, where the present Prime Minister of India was a chief minister before he became the Prime Minister, Narendra Modi. And this is kind of the original waterfront ideal type in India that all other cities try to copy somehow. And you can see looks like a great river. This is called the Sabarmati River, which used to be the third most polluted river in India, or the second one. And you can see a promenade. You could stroll. I've jogged on this riverfront. Not very nice because it's all concrete. It's not good for the knees. So, but still, there are boat rides. There is you can now cross this. All kinds of attraction. There's a biodiversity park, which has an entrance fee that only middle-class people can afford. This is the aspiration of modernity with an eye to real estate development, because the big thing here is the displacement of the people who originally lived on the mostly dry riverbank. There were markets and settlements and all kinds of economic activities of poor people, and these all been shifted away to the outskirts of the city, and the housing has been built for them that they don't like very much because it's too far away from their jobs. And this kind of modern thing has been implanted there. So you see a huge amount of water. So the next question is this a river, a lake, or a stage? Now, it is certainly a stage. What did Narendra Modi do when the Chinese head of state, what is he called in China? The prime minister also, I think. He is sitting there on a traditional Indian chair. And where did he put them? He put them on the riverfront as the kind of epitome of Indian modernity. And there's always this competition between India and China, which one is bigger and important and smarter and etc. So there's a lot of politics there. But this is actually not a river. If you see on this map, this is the top left is the kind of the boundary is the city, and the Sabarmati River runs through the bed, and then you see this dark line at top, that's a canal. There happens to be a canal, the Narmada Canal, which you may know from the Sardar Sarovar project, this most controversial dam in India, which led to the establishment of the World Commission on Dams in the 1990s. That canal is north of the city, upstream of the city. And what does the people do? They take water from that canal. You can see that in the right picture. They divert a bit of water from the canal. You build a weir at the end of the city. So you raise the riverbed and you basically create a lake with a little bit of flow. So this water does not come from Gujarat. It actually comes from Madhya Pradesh, where the dam is. So this is sold under the banner of river rejuvenation. Well, it's exactly 22 kilometers long. And it washes all the dirt out of the city, out of the eye and smell of the city population and then leaves it to the downstream dwellers. Now, and here you can see a map with all the attractions that are there. So here we have, and the big thing here is real estate development on the riverbanks. That is really the driver of this thing. Now, so this I did this in some detail to illustrate what the kind of project here is. So what I'm saying is that water infrastructure development has a cultural dimension, has a political dimension, has an economic dimension. All of them are always there, but specific riverfront developments, water infrastructure developments more emphasize the one or the other. There's also an economics in Varanasi and there's a politics, etc. So it's a matter of relative influence. And why do I say that? Because I'll come back to this. My favorite analytical framework is called cultural political economy. So we've chosen these sites as kind of having cases and comparing cases where the emphasis is slightly different. Now, then the other two projects I'll do much more quickly because otherwise we won't have time. Sorry, here. The second project is, I've already said, I'll just repeat what I said with the pictures there. In the state of Gujarat, when the Sarva project that I just mentioned, this huge, very controversial dam building, water was released in 2002. The then chief minister Modi in Gujarat was very lucky because he had just become chief minister and he could take all the glory and all the credits for the creation of the dam and finally bringing water to Gujarat, which is a semi-arid state. This is Kutch, is the northern region called Kutch. It's bordering the desert with Pakistan. So it's very, very dry. So there is a bit of a water problem in Gujarat in terms of also physical availability, particularly to the west and north. And the idea of this project is to bring water, irrigation water originally, to a large part of the state. So as an irrigation project, it's already very large. But then times change. It was planned in the 1980s when it was finally commissioned early 2000s. Then they said water supply is very important. And what did they do? They built a pipeline system taking water from this canal, a centralized pipeline system where they are pumping water across the state from in centralized management to all the villages in Gujarat, basically. Now, I have still not found an example of this kind of a massive centralized water supply, drinking water supply system. Not nowhere in the world at this scale. This is a scale with, this is a state with about 50 million people, I think. It's not as big as Germany probably, but it is several times bigger than the Netherlands. So it's huge. And they actually built it in no time. And most of it is functioning. Not all of it is functioning. Of course, the usual problems of management and things like that, maintenance, but it is there. So this is a state which is the birthplace of neoliberal economic policy in India. This is a state of traders and industrialists who are all extremely market-oriented, even before, let's say, 1990. And then you get this massive state-led infrastructure project, at least, like I said, at face value, against the trend, so to speak. Now, the question is, how does one understand that? Why is this happening? And then it didn't, you could say, well, one state, what's that? And then all these other state governments started visiting Gujarat. They also wanted to do that. So it became a model. And one of these models is, this is Rajika Reddy. This is someone who just lost an election a few months ago, the chief minister of the state of Telangana, which was a new state split off from Andhra Pradesh. So it was a new state, and he wanted to do state building. And what did he do? He did a statewide drinking water supply program by pumping water from two rivers, and not so centralized, but to all. So they're pumping water 60 to 80 meters. You can't imagine how expensive that water is, but it is done across the state, and he won 2 elections with it. And it's there now. Whether it is as sustainable as the Gujarat one is doubtful in my view, but it is there. And it's also Hyderabad, the capital city of this state, is one of the IT globalization IT industry centers. So it's Chandrababu Naidu in the 1990s, the chief minister, was the champion of the World Bank. And we finally have someone in India who likes the neoliberal project. That is this state, or part of it, because the state was split. So it's counterintuitive that you now see in this time and age states undertaking these large-scale infrastructural projects. So it raises the question, why is this? I won't try to answer the question, but just leave that with you. So, and then next month, I've already said it, I'll do some revisiting of this irrigation system. It's basically about unequal water distribution. How does it happen that some people get water in irrigation systems and others don't? And how does that evolve over time? We've now been looking at it for 30 years with intervals, and we will try to say something reasonable about the evolution of that inequality. Not a happy story because it's getting worse. I can say that with confidence. How and why that happens is a different matter. So here, we're almost there. So what is the approach that I have kind of tried to convey here, or implicitly? In water infrastructure and political rule, that's my interest. I don't think this is reserved for water. You could do this for other infrastructure in the same way. There is nothing particularly, there is something special about water, but it is not so special that you don't have similar questions for other infrastructure. And water is always related to transport and other infrastructure as well. So it's never only about water and infrastructure. I've become interested in the performative dimensions of water and water infrastructure. So it's not just about economic interests or political convenience, but it is also about performing a particular image and role and power of the state. I don't know whether you know Natalie Koch's work, a German scholar who's based in the UK, in the US, was almost 2 years in Heidelberg and has now, I think, moved back to Syracuse. She writes about the city as spectacle. And she writes about new capital cities in, for example, Astana in Kazakhstan, these huge cities that are built in Saudi Arabia, new cities, supposedly eco-cities as well. And she analyzes how states, governments stage spectacles through the way they build these cities. And often water plays a big symbolic and practical role in the design of the city. So that is how this was triggered. And then I've already said cultural political economy, kind of a political economy approach that does take into account the semiotic, cultural, discursive, affective dimensions of water. And then the idea that states do not only rule via institutions, but they also rule through infrastructure. That is a nice piece of work by someone called Mukerji. She's a California-based scholar. She is a historian. She looked at how Louis XIV in France built a canal in the south of France linking the west coast and the Mediterranean coast, Le Canal du Midi, where you now can go on holiday and hire a boat. That was actually a military and economic operation. And she analyzes that case by saying, look here, rulers do not only govern through making rules, laws, institutions, and taxes, but they also rule through rearranging the landscape and arranging the infrastructure. That's the basic idea that we use here. Method, interdisciplinary and comparative. You can ask about that. These are my methodological interests. And then I think I'm there. These are the questions that I have for myself and for you. I hope this speaks to some of your interests. If not, bad luck. Then I would say you're missing something great. But also more specifically, would it be something of interest to you? And in reverse, then, what would you have? Can we have a conversation on how this may or may not link to other research interests in this building? Thank you very much.